you all for coming. Corbin Hazlett was going to originally do this workshop or presentation, and he got indisposed, so asked us to come and do something that's similar. And his thing was going to be about talk about the mountains, music for our mountains, which is I don't know if any of y'all have visited this website and seen that. It's been worked on to some degree, and it's got a lot of ways to go. And I haven't been to see what the latest was on it, but just sort of started out with them looking into some of the early people that were influential in Southwest Virginia who made records and got known in some way. And then the long-range goal, which was more what me and Andy and George were hoping to bring recognition to people that just weren't commercial recording people, that were good players and dedicated to their music, but and did make some field recordings that most people could share and listen to and carry their music forward. It's really everybody's music, but I'd like to recognize the people that kept it going in their lives up until they were old people, and pass it on to younger people like us. And, yeah, we're kind of in their position of trying to pass it on to kids and whoever else would like to learn and share what we know about it. So if you got any questions about why the music sounds the way it does, or why we're playing the way we do, that's kind of what we're here to help you understand it better.
Where did the Crooked Road originate?
You know what it is, kind of, it's a trail through Southwest Virginia.
Right.
And it starts in Rocky Mount, but I guess originated, you mean how the idea came out?
Yeah, how the idea came out.
Yeah, good question. Well, I understand it, this National Council for Traditional Arts guy, Joe Wilson, him and Bobby Patterson of Heritage Records and the National Park Service, Parkway, they kind of collaborated on something to think about how to celebrate the music up here in this upper highlands area of Virginia. They knew there was things going on that they think people on the outside would really get more interested in and bring some tourism to the area. I guess at that time, Floyd store was already going. On Friday night, every Friday, there was going to be something down there to see people playing live music and folks just dancing for the love of dancing. And the Carter Fold, even longer ago than that, was started, which is down below Bristol, beyond Bristol, and celebrated the heritage of the Carter family that were one of the first families of country music. And they got supported by the national grants and things to develop that into a venue where busloads of tourists could come. And this was before the Crooked Road. And so they decided they should build a music center on the Parkway. How many of you have been to the music center out on Blue Ridge? Yeah. So they thought that'd be a good location out there near Galax. Galax is kind of world famous from the Phillips convention, so that was another name that was already out there ahead of time. So they just started thinking, let's just make a way somebody could know about all these little spots along this 250-some mile area, including Ralph Stanley and the Stanley Brothers Memorial at the other end of the Crooked Road. And
Does that go all the way to Tennessee? Is that where it goes?
it stays in Virginia, but
It kind of hooks around back up toward Big
yeah, it goes right near Kingsport, Tennessee, but up in Virginia.
Probably follow the 58.
Yeah, right.
It refers to Route 58 where it snakes through the mountains. If you ever driven out west of Galax and Independence, anybody who has, that road is just like a snake. Like it has to be.
Well named the Crooked Road.
Yeah.
It is no slouch going from here to Rocky Mount on the Crooked Road,
40
which is Route 40, and then
Endicott.
there's some amazing turns there. But
Sir?
You had the little figurines dancing. What's the origin behind that?
Daddy.
Well, he didn't invent them, but
yeah, they had some little olive or something.
Yeah.
Olivia, what was that called? Single doll in there.
yeah, I don't know the origin of the dolls, but years ago, Willard Clower was a local merchant, and he ran a feed and seed store, which is where Angels in the Attic is now. And he had one of those dolls. It had I don't know, it had
Like a little stick.
Had a little stick.
Yeah.
He'd take a handsaw and put it over his knee And while people were playing, he would hit the saw and cause the figure would dance on the edge of the saw. So my father saw that, and he said, "Yeah, I'd like to kind of make that too." But it was my mom who had the idea. Said, "Well, you need to have him. He's a dance partner." And so my dad went back to his farming roots and the single tree yoke for the horses, whatever. He put that on, and so they could dance together. And
Got yoked up, didn't
kind of came up with that way, and with the rubber bands and the hooks and
Fishing swivels from fishing lures.
he kind of evolved, but after a few pairs, he got them really they would dance well, and he just made them as gifts for his siblings and his cousins and his friends, and that didn't think anything of them. And a few years ago, my sister had the idea of having a reunion for all the sets, and so we started asking around, because we didn't know who he had made them for. I think we came up with 30 or 40 sets that he had made, and I had a lot of them. He would give them as gifts, and they would just hang them up in the house or whatever. So we had one of my relatives gave it back, and Mac had said he wanted them, and so I gave them to Mac, and then so Mac's put them on the map. I mean, they've been all over the world with Mac.
They're called lumberjacks, right?
I think that's the.
Some folks call them that in some places.
Lumberjack.
They call it the British people, when they saw them, when I was in Britain one time, they call them jig dolls. Jig dolls. And I call them slusher dolls. And I named them after George's two kids, Reuben and Daisy. Old time names, old time dolls. But theirs were probably made 35, 40 years ago, so they're truly antiques.
What's interesting is having reported back, so when we saw a set of those dolls for sale at some antique store, we go, wonder where they, where did those come from? It was, the dolls that my dad had made, and somebody, a relative had passed on, the kids just, I guess, stole them or whatever.
So the original intent was like to entertain kids or whatever?
Yeah, he just did it for his amusement, and he had. And well, here's a kind of ties back to the old time tradition. But my great uncle had a house that was half log and half regular, but they had weatherboarded the whole house in poplar siding. And my dad learned to play music at that house. Well, years later, my dad bought my great uncle out, and he owned the house. We used it as a barn. When I grew up, it was used as a house. Somebody wanted to buy the logs, so they took all the siding off the house, stored it, and my dad used that siding to make those dolls. So, kind of kept it on.
Did your dad do the paint jobs on them?
Yeah. He first what he did, he took a wood burner, he kind of burned the eyes and the ears and all that stuff in, but it wasn't quite as effective. So he asked my sister to paint them, and she said, well, you're the artist, and I'll show you how to mix the paint, but you do it. And so he started painting them, and he got creative with putting the handkerchiefs and the bib overalls and the bald heads and all that stuff.
Flat eyes.
Yeah, yeah. And just because he was, I've got a few of my dad's old textbooks and stuff when he was in school, and he had doodles all over. I mean, he always had good artistic talent, but he didn't develop it or anything. So it was just kind of, his sense of humor really came out on those dolls.
Let me just spin off a little bit about what Mac was saying and what George has been saying about our music right around here. I don't know how much you are aware of, but the reason the Crooked Road was built up as this kind of way of publicizing what happens in Southwest Virginia, is that this part, the eastern part of the Blue Ridge, right where we are here in Floyd and Patrick and Franklin and Carroll and Grayson counties, is regarded by a lot of people as kind of the mother lode of the very earliest distinctively American form of music, what we call old-time music. Bluegrass came up much later than that. That was Bill Monroe in around the 40s. But old-time music is a combination of different musical traditions, and that happened here because in the early history of the country, so many people were coming here and migrating through this particular place, and they brought all of their different cultural traditions with them, and they all kind of blended together here. You had Scots, Irish, and German people who migrated down the Shenandoah Valley in what was at that time, where Route 81 is now, was the biggest road in the United States. And then they got to the place that's now Roanoke, it's called Big Lick, and they could either turn south to go into the Carolinas, or they could come west up on the mountain and eventually on out towards the Cumberland Gap. So this area, with people coming down the valley, brought the traditions of Scottish and British fiddling and country dancing, and the German folks brought the tradition of tight harmony singing from their religious and church traditions. And then the people coming up across Virginia from the eastern tidewater were people who brought English and English dance traditions, and they brought African American people and their music with them. So when you hear us playing a fiddle and a banjo and a guitar together, that represents a kind of a blend of music traditions from all over the world. So this is kind of like, this has been multicultural long before anybody ever dreamed up such a word to describe it. But those traditions took on here, and they stayed here, and they became a kind of part of the way that people here live. If you had to put up a barn or get up your hay or cut your winter's wood, you might need some help from the neighbors to do that. And of course, back in those days, nobody had much cash because it was so far to take anything to market it from where we are up here on the mountain. And so what people would do was invite all their neighbors in, and they get their work done, and then they play banjo and fiddle music and have a dance. And that's how communities were built up around them. Music was a central part of how people got along and helped each other out. And then, of course, when your neighbor needed something, then you'd go the same thing and help them out. So it seemed to stay embedded here for a long time, because up until fairly recently, really up until bulldozers came along after World War II, this was a very isolated part of the mountains, much more so than not very far away, down in the hollows or even up on the New River. This was a kind of a, y'all know Floyd County, all the water drains out of Floyd County, right? We're sort of sitting right on top of a big flat tableland, a plateau, and people lived here and have been playing this music here for a long time. So that's why people still come here to hear the music that has been played here and by those who were before us for a long time.
And the guitar was actually the late entry. The fiddle was brought by the settlers, and then the banjos kind of evolved from the slaves brought that with them. And in the guitar, I don't think until Martin invented, came up with the dreadnought flat top guitar, and then they started mass producing them to the point where you could port them from the catalog. And that's when they made entry in around here. But I don't know exactly when they first Floyd County first found the guitar, but
It's in the 20s was the first
Yeah.
time we ever saw them.
My father-in-law grew up in Rockcastle Gorge, just down the mountain from Floyd, and in the 1930s, when he was a kid, guitars were new and exciting because you could play so many different kinds of instruments. But it's compared, for a long time, a dance band around Floyd County was one fiddle and one banjo picker. And what the old people would do, y'all ever seen one of the old log houses? Usually they had two big rooms, right? One they called the hall, and the other one was the parlor. And when folks wanted to have a dance, what they would do would be they'd take all the furniture out and put it out in the yard, and then they'd put the fiddler and the banjo picker sitting right together in the door between the two rooms, and they'd be playing up a storm and dancing up a storm in the rooms, but that's for a long, long time. If you went to any country dance with black folks, white folks, whoever it was, that was a dance band for a long, long time around here.
Even before that, Ab Weddle speaks about just going to parties, play parties, he called them. I guess the church people didn't like the word dance. Play party. I think the way he described the kids would just do rhythmic things and dance, and then he walked in with a mandolin and they said, get some music in there, and he played to the beat that they had set up by just getting and just playing and no music. But then music was a welcome to it. So the dancing probably came first in a way, from the rhythms. So I thought if you wanted, I could play an old ancient tune on the fiddle that maybe something before banjos even got with it. Here's one over there, another thing that was about the marching around the walls of Jericho. There's another one that's probably you've heard. It's about Bonaparte marching into Russia. And there was a guy from Floyd recorded it in that same series of old original tunes that is something that influenced a lot of us that we like to hear and play. Down hiking, walk up through a nice canyon, almost like the gorge.
It's part of the saddle overlook trail, or I don't know if that's what they call it, but one of the Rocky Knob trails goes right down, follows the old road. It used to be a public road.
What's that old White House that sits up the creek there? Is that the house?
Yeah, well, that's not where my father-in-law was raised, but my wife's great-great-grandfather did all the interior trim work on that house. There used to be a big orchard there. That was and apples have always been a mainstay crop around here, particularly before Prohibition. Apples were a crop that you could raise and where you didn't have flat land for crops, and you could sell them to the distilleries in order to make money to pay your taxes and buy your salt and sugar and stuff you couldn't produce for yourself. Most folks, back then, produced almost everything they ate right on the farm, and that way of life continued here much, much, much longer than as the world around was developed.
Indeed, now?
Yeah.
Let's play old tune John Newton used to play. Yellow Cat. Ivan Whittle, I mentioned down at the other stage, worked in this barn as a young man, didn't he, George?
Yeah.
They had hay. This place was just a huge dairy farm, right? His brother, they made hay around Floyd. George said that. Why put it up in this barn?
Ivan lived just down Route 8, not far off from here. And the way I understand, he worked here in this barn. I don't know how much, but some during his adult life.
Anyway, him and that's another old timer named John Newton Hilton played together, and a common tune that they played that we like to call Yellow Cat. John Newton was kind of a character. Remember, he would say something, when he shook his hand, he'd say, you know what I'd do if I had a hand like that?
I remember one time we were playing music with John Newton, and he was, an old country man. He'd always have a pot of pinto beans cooking on the stove, and he'd come in, kick off his barn boots by the door and come sit with you, One day, we were, me and Mac were up there, we were getting tuned up to play, and the TV was on. And it was playing some real fancy, highfalutin national music. And old John Newton, he just looked disgusted. He spit his tobacco into the jar and said, "They done ruined country music."
Yeah, he didn't even want to buy cornmeal out of the store. He raised his own corn and dried it and had a way to grind it out in the shed. So the store-bought stuff wasn't fit to eat.
Couldn't make good cornbread out of store-bought cornbread.
You don't can hear the cat meowing.
tell us a little bit about your background? We've seen some people that they learn things out here, there's phenomenal musicians. And so much is intergenerational. So give us about an idea of your background.
All right, I'll try to keep it short. My dad played harmonica when I was a kid. That was the first folk music I ever heard. They had moved from the country to town, and he was a minister. They were trying to be leaders in the community, and they wanted to play stuff they thought educated people would like. But they didn't grow up around banjos, fiddles, or anything. But my dad would learn harmonica from a black playmate he had. So he kind of had integrated his playmates in a way when just for a kid. He learned some from this particular black boy that he gave credit to. And then I was kind of the harmonica. So it caught my attention, and I learned to play something on that. And taught his style of harmonica playing. And later on, got a guitar, 8th grade or so. And learning by ear. I didn't take any formal lessons. I was just listening to stuff that was out there, the Beatles, barely didn't hear the radio much, but I did get a little transistor radio where I could go to bed and turn it on and listen to Wooly Bully, things like that. Every day, 11 o'clock, sort of the up and coming stuff in the 60s. But I just kind of like music, and it's like, I'd like to know more how to play this stuff. So I just kind of went on and went to high school learning the guitar, some electric guitar, acoustic guitar, and finger picking, and listening to stuff like James Taylor, Spanish picking style. Didn't know anything about country music much. I wasn't, my parents, they didn't care for country music, so they never heard it much. But then, I don't know, in high school I kind of had seen some TV shows with Black Scrubs on. And, Randall Walker did that TV show that you could see on Saturday. Brett got the notion to get a banjo, and I arranged to buy a banjo and a guitar from a girlfriend's grandfather who had a music shop. And I just said, oh, I got a banjo, and he's doing something other people aren't doing my age. And I kind of set about trying to pick on a banjo, so I picked on. And then we kind of went to festivals and ran into other people playing fiddles and banjos, and just talking to them, and telling them about the Blue Ridge Mountains and stuff, music from England, Ireland, and Scotland on the fiddle. Just a big world of stuff about music. And I just got more interested in it, and I heard this album called Circle the Unbroken that had a lot of big names like Doc Watson and Maybell, and Low was on there, Morning Lake, and I started listening to other people that had do something, and heard what they had, read the liner notes, and learned, I'll check that out. So you hear somebody talking about a movie, and you sort of think about it, and at least to something else at school. So that's what's kind of happening just over time, involved, and ran into people that went to the K-Lac Service Convention, and had a banjo, and didn't know anything about how to claw hammer, but I'd heard of it. And then this English guy came walking by with a little album. He said he would like to sell me an album. But, well, I don't know anything about the music. I play the Wade Ward way. I'll buy the album if you give me a claw hammer lesson. So he gave me a claw hammer lesson, and I paid $5 for the album. It was a good deal to me. I didn't really hear it for a long time. Didn't really know who Wade Ward was in at that time. Wade Ward had passed away. But Wade Ward used to win banjo contests up at K-Lac a lot. He got recorded by the folklorists that were coming down to kind of capture the music that was, the folks that were getting old, and bluegrass was coming up, and they wanted to try to preserve all of it that could. And then I didn't get much out of that album from that guy, but I did go get another tip and learn how to claw hammer, and I tried to think, it works better for me than particularly does. So I went on into just wanting to play the old time and grand dancing with the Blacksburg clogging team, and out here with people dancing flatfoot and at Major Mill, and like we do in the store, and then events like this, you see wood stuck out of the traditional opportunity to come out and dance, a place you want to dance. You go to a festival and you don't have dance boards out front. It's all right, what we do then. And so I just wanted to be part of the providing music for that kind of atmosphere. And I ran into Ivan Will and these corn cutter guys and Georgia folks. Just wanted to identify with this area because I moved here in 1990 and we'd like to do some good with my music. Make it, pass it on to other people and youth and anybody who wants to help with it. I just been listening to stuff for years, trying to get inspirations from local musicians primarily, and other people that play well. I always respect everybody's music. Something special about the ones that have a deep root in this area. That's really mountain music, and that's where I live. I don't want to keep that going.
Where are you from?
From central southern Virginia, but not in mountains. Piedmont, yeah, I think. Just ran into somebody that's from the county, but not there. She was. Talked about places that he knew where I was from. As I remember visiting there when I was a kid. But I grew up in North Carolina, we lived in central Virginia. Well, that's my story. I'm thinking.
I'm kind of like back. By the way, we've all been playing together for what, 25 years at least. I mean, it's been a long time. And one of the greatest joys in my life has been playing this kind of music with my friends. I started playing guitar when I was 9 years old. I started teaching myself banjo when I was 11. And taught myself from the old Pete Seeger book. And I started to learn clawhammer banjo, just kind of driving. And the home I was raised in, like, that music was not very good. So I learned real early that if I wanted to play this kind of music, I had to get out of the house. So the whole time I was coming up as a teenager, while everybody else was going to football games and getting drunk, I would get my 58 Chevy pickup truck. We lived down outside of Winston, and I would drive up in the mountains. And I'd just stop at a little country store and say, hey, is there anybody around here playing that music? They'd say, yeah, a lot of them going up this way. So I'd go to some home place and introduce myself, and we'd sit and talk about the weather and the crops and the kids. And eventually, they'd play tunes. And that, to me, was just the discovery of a world and a way of life that I had always admired, I had always respected, and the music was part of that way of life. And so I've lived in a lot of different places, and I've moved all around, but eventually I wound up back in this neck of the woods through a strange combination of circumstances, and I married a local gal whose folks have real deep roots here, and got involved in this musical community. But I'd always kind of felt like it was really kind of weird, like how come I was so attracted to this wild old, hillbilly music? And then just a few years ago, I was adopted. A few years ago, I found out that my ancestors had lived in this part of Virginia and out into the eastern corner of Tennessee for hundreds and hundreds. So I stumbled, even a blind hog finds an acre of woods. That's my story.
Well, that's interesting because I grew up 8 miles up the road toward Willis on a farm, beef cattle farm, and I was immersed in this music. It was playing in the house all the time. My dad, when he'd come in from the fields or working, milking or whatever, his way of relaxing was to get a guitar or a banjo or an instrument and just sit and play. And he had fiddles, he had harmonicas, he had autoharp, mandolin. We had everything. Yeah, we didn't have a bass, but we had everything else. So I was the youngest of 4, and none of my siblings had taken much interest in music up to this point. So at age 2, I was given a ukulele, and I didn't really learn to play it at age 2, but there's pictures of me. I had it left hand, I was holding it like this. And I guess I thought I was Jimi Hendrix or something. And I remember, I have a memory of my dad playing in a circle in a house, somebody's home, living room, whatever, and I'm sitting beside him and playing away on that ukulele. Then I started playing harmonica a little bit because my great uncle was also named George. He played harmonica. He played harmonica in Floyd cutters. And then my grandfather's older brother, who passed away before I was born, his name was Ron Slusher. He was a really good harmonica player. So I had a lot of harmonica opportunities there. And then when I was 7 years old, I started playing all the harp a little bit. And my mom had all these folk song books with the chords in it and stuff. And I just remember having this epiphany. Saying, well, you know, if I can play on top of Old Smoky in key of C, play it in G, I put these chords with it. And I figured out the 1, 4, and 5 without knowing what I was doing when I was about 7, 8 years old. And then at some point I learned chords on the mandolin. But then when I was 11, I decided to play the guitar. So, you know, fingers aren't so big. And so I just remember mentally translating everything I learned on the harp to the guitar. And as far as chord patterns and stuff like that. So that's, and because I took an interest in that, I wanted to be in the school band. And Mom and Dad, having seen the other 3 not take any interest, they parted the Red Sea in order for me to have a trumpet so I could play in the band. I mean, it was a lot of money. Didn't have a lot of money lying around, but my mom, bless her heart, she paid for my trumpet on installments. And so I needed to be in the band when I was in the 5th grade. And so when I took an interest in guitar, I was playing my dad's guitar, and he said, "For your birthday, we're getting you a guitar." I mean, oh, okay. So we went over to Christiansburg to Kittinger's Music, and I bought a Yamaha guitar. Well, they bought it, but that was my 12th year birthday present. So I started playing there. And of course, like Mac was talking about, popular music today was permeating through everything. So I was learning all the old time stuff. And the old time stuff I learned was a little different. My dad would play with Ivan Weddle, who had folk cutters, and Uncle George and Uncle Freeman played guitar. And we would go maybe once every 2 or 3 months, we'd have a house party or something, somebody have a party we'd go play. And so they were playing all these old time songs like Soldier's Joy, Liberty, and stuff like that. They was also playing I'm Looking Over a 4-leaf clover, which has every chord that you can imagine. Also 5'2", Eyes Are Blue, and stuff like that. And those songs were popular. I figured out later, those songs were popular back in the teens and 20s and 30s when my great uncles and grandfather and all them were young. And they just learned to play on their instruments. And so Ivan was fiddling all those songs. And I thought they were just old time songs. And here now I hear recordings of big bands back in the 20s and 30s playing them. And I said, well, I know that song. And but anyway, so that's how I did it. And I got an electric guitar when I was 18. I wanted to be playing on. And then in college I got into more into bluegrass, and I wanted to be Tony Rice. So I don't know that I ever achieved either one of those, but that's the ideal. Biggest compliment I ever had when I was young was Ab Weddle, which is Ivan's brother, who I also played fiddle. He used to call me Riley Puckett. And I was just starting out, and here comes Riley. That was the biggest compliment. So that's how I got to it. So I played in rock and roll, country, bluegrass, old time, and gospel. I've done every genre in groups. But I tell you, when Mac started playing with Mac, I played with a lot of fiddlers, because Ivan was really good. But most fiddlers have quirky. You have to really be on your toes, especially if they're not playing for dancers. If they're just playing for their own amusement, they'll either throw an extra beat in or take a beat out. And you got to really pay, and that's why I had to listen so close. But then when I get with Mac, I mean, he's rock solid, perfect, really. And Jason Phillips, the same way, just right on the money. I mean, it's a pleasure to play with these guys, it really is. And when you get in a groove going, you can feel it.
Yeah.
You're playing, but you're not part of it. It's like
you live right up off the ground.
it's like something takes over, and you're just an observer, and that's what I live for. That's the whole reason I play music. To have those out of body experiences. I don't know why you do that.
He knows exactly what you're talking about.
I don't know that he does.
Like, if you do a Charlie Rice real quick.
All right, the old famous the D ninth seventh chord. That's about the only thing I can do.
You gonna play Stairway to
Or this
Heaven?
turn right second number 2.
Oh, by the way, Mac did not tell you, but along the way, he started making banjos as well.
Yeah.
Mac made my banjo. And he has made, how many?
175.
175, and people all over the world want to have a Mac Traynham banjo because they're so good.
We got time for one more tune, and appreciate you all coming up. And, I don't know, let's see what we're going to try.
What do you want to do, man?
I was thinking Tommy Love or something, a little Blue Ridge tune like that, or let's try Ocean Creek. All right, yeah, a lot of these tunes are just tunes for flat footing, and if you've got an introduction to do it, but otherwise, listen and see what George does. You know, guitar gets to be creative, but it's supposedly all D. Drop an E on. Anyway, everybody, y'all know what Shooting Creek is? It's a little place out here on the edge of the mountain. And people just, it's special, so they made a tune out for it.